Hey guys, tonight we're taking a stroll through time. Not just any stroll, but one that tiptoes along the edge of eternity itself. You're about to wander into the strange, glittering, sometimes horrifying history of how humans have tried, again and again, to cheat death. Yeah, good luck with that. You probably won't survive this one, metaphorically, of course. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always fascinating to know which corners of the world are drifting off with me tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking through a cave. The air is cool, heavy, and quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat. On the walls, painted hands, red ochre circles, and shapes that almost look like ghosts. You reach out, touch the ancient dust, and for a moment, you sense what they felt, the same trembling awareness that life ends. And that's the moment the story of immortality begins. Humans have always known death was inevitable, but instead of accepting it, we got creative. Really creative. Some tried to trap the soul in jars. Others prayed, sacrificed, experimented, or even self-mummified. Across every civilization, one truth echoed. Maybe death isn't the end. If I just do this one strange thing. You imagine those first humans staring into campfire embers, whispering about ancestors and spirits. Fire was both warmth and mystery. It consumed everything. Yet its light seemed alive. That flicker became our first metaphor for the soul. You can almost hear the hum of those ancient voices. Maybe we can feed the fire forever. Fast forward thousands of years, and you find yourself in Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. Clay tablets tell stories of Gilgamesh, the first recorded hero who literally goes on a quest to avoid dying. He seeks a magical plant that can make him immortal, but a serpent steals it while he sleeps. Classic. Even then, we were writing moral lessons about hubris and human limits. Still, the idea didn't die. It just evolved, like a meme that outlived its host. What's wild is that archaeologists have found ancient burial practices, suggesting people believed in multiple lives, as if death was just a pit stop. Graves filled with food, jewelry, and tools. You picture a prehistoric person saying, "Better pack my spear. I might need it in the afterlife." That simple gesture, burying someone with their things, is one of the earliest signs of our refusal to accept finality. Mainstream history says this fear of death pushed humans to invent religion itself. The promise of life after death, whether it's paradise, reincarnation, or cosmic recycling, was a comforting thought in a world filled with disease, famine, and predators. But there's a quirky detail here. In some Neolithic graves, bodies were buried in a fetal position, as if returning to the womb of the earth. Death, rebirth, repeat. The first respawn cycle, if you will. Scholars still argue whether early humans believed in literal afterlife journeys or just performed rituals out of respect. But one thing's certain, you're part of a species that looked death in the eye and said, "Nah, not today." You move forward in time. The air grows warmer, thicker with incense and sunlight. Now you're in Egypt. Sand stretches to the horizon. Priests chant over golden coffins, bodies wrapped in linen, organs neatly stored in jars. They believed death wasn't an ending but a doorway, a complicated, bureaucratic afterlife that required proper paperwork in the form of spells, amulets, and elaborate tombs. We'll come back to those tombs soon. But for now, linger in that idea. Humanity's earliest technological innovation wasn't fire, or the wheel, or agriculture. It was memory, the ability to preserve someone's essence through story, ritual, or even smell. Imagine an ancient Egyptian standing by a tomb, whispering a name. As long as I say it, they live. It's poetic and chilling, immortality through remembrance. Maybe that's why we make videos, write songs, take selfies. Maybe every record we leave is our own modern pyramid, a way to say, "Don't forget me when I'm gone." You shift your weight, feeling the hum of history beneath your feet. From bones and ashes to silicon and data, the pattern is the same. We keep inventing new ways to stay, long after we've gone. Somewhere a fire flickers again. The night is older now, and so are you. You've crossed tens of thousands of years in a few heartbeats. But the question hasn't changed. Can life outsmart death? In the next stretch of this journey, you'll walk into Egypt's embalming chambers, where the art of not dying reached its most elaborate form. You'll hear the hiss of hot resin, smell the myrrh, And maybe realize that even the gods didn't get it right the first time. But you're getting sleepy now, aren't you? That's okay. Just drift with the thought. Death may be inevitable, but the dream of forever never really dies. You step into the golden light of Egypt now, the sand reflecting. So bright it almost hums. The air smells like warm stone, dried herbs, and something faintly sweet, like honey that's been left in the sun too long. You hear the rhythm of chisels echoing in the Valley of the Kings, the hush of the Nile somewhere behind you, and the slow chanting of priests who are, in their own way, ancient engineers of eternity. You're standing at the edge of a ritual older than empires, mummification. The Egyptians believed that if they could just preserve the body, keep it intact, recognizable, addressable, then the soul, the Ka, would have a place to return to after death. It wasn't enough to die well. You had to die correctly. You watch as the embalmers work. They move methodically, almost lovingly, removing organs, drying the body with salt, wrapping it in linen. Each layer isn't just cloth, it's a spell, a code, a promise to the gods. The heart stays. It's the seat of the soul. The brain? Pulled out through the nose and tossed away. Too messy to bother with, they might have said. Imagine being one of the first civilizations to develop written language and deciding the brain is useless. You can almost feel the dry rush of natron powder as it covers the skin, sucking out every drop of decay. This isn't horror. This is reverence. The Egyptians didn't fear death as an end. They feared forgetting how to live again. Mainstream historians date formal mummification back to around 2600 BCE, during the Fourth Dynasty. That's over 4,600 years ago, before iron tools, before paper, before even the idea of Europe. They built entire industries around death, professional mourners, coffin carpenters, resin importers. You could say death was the biggest business of the Bronze Age. But here's the odd part. Sometimes the mummies weren't even people of power. Archaeologists have found cats, ibises, crocodiles, even scarab beetles carefully wrapped in linen. The afterlife apparently was an all-inclusive resort. No species left behind. Scholars still argue whether Egyptians truly believed in literal immortality or just symbolic preservation. Some claim the rituals were about control, mastery over chaos, order imposed on the inevitable. Others say it was pure devotion, an expression of cosmic balance, Ma'at. Maybe it was both. Because if there's one thing humans crave more than life itself, it's the illusion of control over what comes next. You move deeper into a tomb, your footsteps muffled by centuries of dust. The hieroglyphs along the walls tell stories of the soul's perilous journey. The weighing of the heart against the feather of truth. The monstrous crocodile-headed Ammit waiting to devour the unworthy. It reads like a celestial court case. You live, you die, you stand trial. Eternity depends on whether you lived lightly enough. It's strange comfort, isn't it? The idea that morality could earn you immortality. That being good was its own kind of medicine. You glance at one carving showing the god Anubis guiding a soul toward the scales. His jackal face is calm, professional. He's done this 1,000 times. You wonder if he ever gets bored. Then there's the Book of the Dead. Not a single book, but a customizable manual for the afterlife. Wealthy Egyptians commissioned scrolls packed with spells, passwords, and maps to help their soul navigate the underworld. It's basically an ancient cheat code for resurrection. Press X to bypass eternal darkness. You touch the cool limestone wall and think, maybe this was humanity's first software update, patching mortality with ritual, faith, and narrative. Because in a way, that's what every civilization does. It writes stories against forgetting. And here's your quirky fact for this part. Scientists once unwrapped a mummy and discovered that beneath the linen, someone had slipped a small wooden toy, a tiny boat, maybe a child's. Maybe it was meant to carry the soul across celestial waters. Or maybe it was just love, grief disguised as superstition. Either way, it survived longer than any of its makers. Outside, the sun begins to set. The pyramids glow red in the fading light, shadows stretching like fingers across the sand. You realize these monuments weren't built for the living. They were designed to outlast them, to shout across eternity, "We were here." But here's the twist. Even the most perfect mummies decay. The tombs were looted, the names forgotten, the treasures melted down. For all their brilliance, the Egyptians didn't beat death. They just slowed it down long enough for us to notice. You take a slow breath, and the scent of old resin fades into something metallic, colder. The hum of the desert is replaced by the whisper of parchment and the sound of distant bells. Civilization shifts east. The sands of Egypt blur into mist, and you're walking now through jade palaces and Moonlit courtyards where emperors dream of eternity not through salt and linen, but through the taste of a golden elixir. They called it the drink of immortality. And you're about to see why that dream was sometimes deadly. The air cools suddenly, scented with sandalwood and something sharp, metallic, almost medicinal. You blink and Egypt dissolves into mist. The desert becomes a mountain path shrouded in clouds. Below you lies the yellow river, curling through valleys like a living vein. Lanterns flicker in the distance, and their glow looks like fireflies caught between worlds. You're in ancient China now, the land of jade, poetry, and emperors who wanted more than empires. They wanted eternity itself. Inside a palace courtyard, you see a man dressed in gold and crimson robes. He's surrounded by scholars, alchemists, and physicians. Before him stands a small jade cup filled with shimmering liquid. He raises it, hesitates for a heartbeat, then drinks. The crowd bows low, holding their breath. Somewhere a gong sounds. Congratulations, Your Majesty. You just swallowed mercury. Welcome to the Chinese elixir craze. The first known emperor to try this dangerous route to immortality was Qin Shi Huang, the man who unified China around 21 BCE. You might know him. Better for the terracotta army, thousands of clay soldiers built to protect him in the afterlife. What's less famous is that he died young, from drinking what his alchemists swore was the elixir of life. Liquid mercury, mixed with jade powder and herbs. The ultimate cosmic detox. You can almost hear the royal alchemist whisper, "A few drops more, and you'll live forever." And technically, he wasn't wrong. His tomb still exists, untouched for over 2,000 years, sealed beneath rivers of toxic mercury vapor that still leak from the ground today. His body may have rotted, but his poison lives on. That's the kind of irony history loves, immortality, achieved through eternal contamination. Mainstream historians note that these elixirs weren't all reckless superstition. They were rooted in Taoist philosophy, which saw the body as a microcosm of the universe. If the stars could live forever, maybe the right combination of minerals could align human energy with the cosmos. Alchemy to them wasn't chemistry gone wrong. It was a spiritual science. And honestly, it almost sounds reasonable when you hear their logic. Life was balance. Death was imbalance. So if you could restore that balance, purify the body, harmonize the breath, and align the internal energy called qi, you could, in theory, stretch your lifespan indefinitely. Except, mercury. But not every immortalist drank poison. Some tried subtler paths. Taoist sages retreated into mountains, living on dew, pine needles, and breath alone. They practiced slow breathing, meditative stillness, and even something called turtle, sleep, slowing the heartbeat until it was barely there. To them, stillness was power. The less you moved, the less life leaked away. You picture an old monk sitting cross-legged for years, barely blinking, bones turning to stone under his robes. Oddly enough, science has recently confirmed that extreme meditation can lower metabolism by astonishing degrees. Maybe those ancient ascetics weren't so far off. Then there's the story of the 8 immortals, legendary figures who supposedly found different ways to transcend death. One by art, one by laughter, one by drunkenness, and one by pure kindness. It's almost comforting that even in myth, there wasn't just one path to forever. And here's your quirky fact for this stretch. Archaeologists found ancient longevity pills in a Han Dynasty tomb. The tablets were made of potassium nitrate and magnesium, stored in delicate bronze boxes. The inscription literally said, "Elixir of eternal life." Scientists later analyzed it and found it would have caused vomiting, diarrhea, and maybe cardiac arrest. So yeah, eternal life via eternal regret. Scholars still argue whether the emperors truly believed these concoctions worked or if it was a political show. Divine rulers proving their cosmic link to heaven. Because when you're treated like a god, dying like a mortal probably felt embarrassing. You walk past jade figurines, scrolls covered in talismanic scripts and tiny gold cups. Everything glitters, but nothing feels alive. You start to realize immortality, at least for the powerful, wasn't about life. It was about ownership, owning time, owning fate, owning even the right to not die. The wind shifts, carrying incense and the rustle of bamboo. Somewhere far off, monks chant softly, their voices weaving through the hills like fog. One line catches your ear. To seek life forever is to never live at all. You follow that sound, and the palace fades into shadow. The ground beneath you changes again, stone to marble, incense to olive oil. You hear waves against cliffs, the hum of an older language. You're stepping into Greece now, land of philosophers who didn't drink mercury, but might have done something even stranger. They tried to outsmart death with ideas. You find yourself standing on a marble terrace overlooking the Aegean Sea. The air here tastes different, salty clean, and buzzing with thought. Somewhere below, a few fishermen call out to each other, their voices echoing across the water. But up here it's quiet, the kind of quiet that makes the world feel like a classroom for the soul. You're in ancient Greece, where death wasn't just a fear, it was a philosophical puzzle waiting to be solved. You can almost hear Socrates' laughter drifting through the agora. He's surrounded by students, calm and barefoot, talking about life, death, and the immortality of the soul while sipping watered-down wine. He's the guy who says, "Why fear death? Maybe it's the best nap you'll ever have." And then, when he's sentenced to die by poison, he drinks it smiling. That kind of confidence either means enlightenment or a truly next-level poker face. For the Greeks, cheating death wasn't about potions or spells, it was about understanding. They believed the soul was immortal by nature, and the body was just a temporary vessel, like a rental car for the spirit. You drive it around for a bit, take it through some bad roads, maybe dent the bumper, but when it breaks down, you just return it. You wander through an open-air academy where Plato once taught. The garden is calm, filled with olive trees and the murmur of bees. Plato believed that the soul came from a realm of perfect forms, and that learning, true learning, was simply remembering what your soul already knew. Death, in that view, wasn't an ending. It was graduation day, mainstream historical fact. Plato actually described death as the soul escaping the prison of the body, he thought. Philosophy itself was preparation for dying well, a kind of spiritual training montage. While the rest of us are panicking about taxes, Plato's basically out here saying, you're not living unless you're practicing how to die. But not everyone agreed. Epicurus, a few centuries later, took a hard left turn. When we exist, death is not. And when death exists, we are not. Translation, stop worrying. It literally doesn't matter. You won't even know you're gone. It's the philosophical version of don't text back your ex, it's over. Still, even with their calm reasoning, the Greeks couldn't quite resist the fantasy of living forever. You can see it in their myths. Achilles dipped in the river Styx. Orpheus trying to rescue Eurydice from death, and Heracles, that half-god who finally earns immortality after a lifetime of impossible labors. Every story feels like a confession. We know we can't escape death. But what if we could? You stop at a small temple overlooking the sea. A statue of Asclepius, the god of healing, watches you with stone eyes. Offerings of herbs, coins, and clay limbs lie at his feet. People's prayers carved into shape. In these temples, patients would sleep overnight, hoping the god would appear in their dreams and heal them. You imagine that. Hundreds of people sleeping in sacred halls, waiting for a divine doctor to make house calls. The line between faith and placebo never looked so peaceful. And here's your quirky fact. Greek physicians once believed that sniffing certain herbs could trick death into leaving you alone for a while. One doctor even recommended garlic as a protective charm against spirits of the underworld. So next time someone complains about your garlic breath, just tell them you're warding off Hades. Scholars still argue whether the Greeks truly saw immortality as achievable or simply as allegory, an intellectual exercise about the soul. Some say their eternal life was really about legacy, leaving behind ideas so powerful they never die. You write a dialogue, you start a school, and boom, you're immortal in the mind of history. You sit on a stone bench where maybe Aristotle once rested. The sun warms your shoulders and the wind smells faintly of time. You realize something subtle. All these philosophers, for all their talk of transcendence, still built monuments, still carved their words into marble. It's like they couldn't fully believe their own theories until they saw them last, longer than their bones. As the sky begins to darken, you hear a lyre in the distance. Its melody drifts over the cliffs like a lullaby for mortals. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine what it must have felt like to live in a world where every conversation was about the meaning of existence, and every night sky reminded you how small and how infinite you were. The Greeks left behind wisdom, logic, and geometry, but when it came to death, they didn't solve it. They just made it sound less scary. Now the air shifts again. You feel heat on your back, dust on your tongue, and a low hum of chanting somewhere far away. The olive groves fade into dense jungle, A river glows faintly in moonlight. You're crossing into India, the land of cycles, karma, and yogic immortals who didn't just talk about escaping death. They practiced it. The sound of the Aegean Sea dissolves into a low, rhythmic hum, a chant that vibrates in your chest more than in your ears. You open your eyes and the world has changed color. Everything here feels older, softer, greener. The air smells of smoke, ghee, and river mud. In the distance, a bell tolls once, then fades into the sound of flowing water. You're in ancient India now, where life and death aren't opposites, just different poses in the same eternal dance. Somewhere along the Ganges, a figure sits cross-legged under a tree, perfectly still. He hasn't spoken in days, maybe weeks, maybe years. A thin thread of breath moves through him like wind through reeds. They call men like him yogis, seekers who believe that through meditation, discipline, and breath control, they can slip out of the cycle of birth and death itself. You watch his chest rise and fall, slow as the river behind him. In the flicker of the fire, he looks neither alive nor dead, but something in between. The locals whisper he's chasing Amrita, the nectar of immortality, a cosmic substance churned from the ocean of milk in myth, said to make gods deathless. And through ritual, fasting, and stillness, he hopes to brew it inside his own body. That's right, and not to find the elixir, but to become it. Mainstream historical fact. The earliest references to Amrita appear in the Rig Veda, written more than 3,000 years ago. It's the same word that gave us ambrosia in Greek. Texts, both from an even older Indo-European root meaning undying. Different continents, same dream. Humans everywhere were whispering to the same fear. You wander closer. The yogi's followers move like shadows, tending the fire, offering rice and flowers. You hear one murmur, he's been in samadhi for 7 days. That word, samadhi, means complete stillness, mind dissolved, body suspended. Some ancient records describe sages so deep in meditation, they were mistaken for corpses, their skin cooling, heartbeat nearly gone. Centuries later, explorers claimed to find living mummies in Himalayan caves, still seated in meditation, perfectly preserved by the cold. A little creepy, sure, but it's the same logic as the pharaohs, just turned inward. Where Egypt preserved the body for the soul to return, India preserved the soul so the body didn't matter at all. And here's your quirky fact. Some early yogic sects practice something called Kachari Mudra, where you literally train yourself to roll your tongue back into your nasal cavity, sealing off breath and taste.